In a world where products and services are becoming more and more commoditized, customer experience is the only true differentiator. And that's a quote by Anita France. So, welcome again to the Profitable Photographer. I am super excited to make the acquaintance of my guest today, Marcel Vanderhorst. He is way down under in Australia, and I'm here on the coast in San Diego. So we're just separated by, not really separated by an ocean. Yes, separated by an ocean. So if we could get up way high, we could wave at each other, perhaps. Before I get started, I want to tell you something fun. I was just in, where was I? Idaho. And I'd posted that on Facebook. And someone that I had done a mentor call with, her name's Sue Rainey, said, I'm in Idaho. Let me meet you somewhere. Let's hang out. Let's have dinner. And she's somebody that has listened to every single episode. And so talking with her over a wonderful dinner was interesting because I would start to tell her something and be like, oh, you already know that. You listened to the podcast and I've shared that. So a little shout out to Sue Rainey. And if you are ever in San Diego or you hear I'm somewhere near you, I'd love to have lunch or dinner, coffee. It means a lot to me that people value what I do, are listening, and all that good stuff. So you can go to Luci Dumas Coaching. You can find me on Facebook if you're not already a member of my group or just my personal page. You are cordially invited. All right, so let's get started. I keep looking down because things keep disappearing. All right, let me tell you about the wonderful Marcel. He has been a wedding photographer for 16 years, and he cares deeply about delivering the ultimate client experience. And we're going to talk about what that looks like. And he loves the connective and passionate memories that he creates for couples that book him. And he's also generous with his time by offering advice and mentoring to photographers entering the market. He loves to assist other photography studios as needed, and also helping our wider wedding planning community to help people in that part of the industry plan the wedding from the photographer's perspective. And man, I really value that. How do you, without launching into big questions, just in that, how do you do that part with other vendors or, wedding planners? How do you connect with them, and what do you sort of share? I know that's a
Well,
big question.
firstly, thank you for having me on.
Oh
And
yeah,
to
and
answer your
welcome.
question, it's great to be amongst some much esteemed companies such as Jerry Jonas, who you recently interviewed,
Hmm.
who was my first mentor.
Mm.
But to answer your question, networking is probably the number one reason why I sort of do this and have a sustainable business like this as well, is that I always try to connect with as many wedding vendors as I can, and also be part of the greater photography community and being involved and getting people together and helping each other. So that way we can all work towards the greater good of providing a better service to our clients.
Hmm. I did weddings for 10, 12 years before I switched to babies and kiddos and families. And I didn't realize that networking was something I was supposed to do. I just am a natural connector with people. And if I loved working with someone, I referred them many times. If I was at a bridal show, I would tell people, hey, go see my friend at Flower Power, the cake, and try this. And so I think we share that understanding, and probably you enjoy the networking part. Am I right in that?
Yes, because when I first started, there wasn't Facebook groups, there wasn't really Instagram. That
Mhm.
there, uh, you really had to do a lot of sort of in-person sort of catch-ups. So when it came to networking with other photographers, and that sort of led me to getting referrals from other photographers that were booked. and also, um, yeah, also getting advice as well, which is a big part of learning and growing a business from the ground up.
Mm-hmm.
So as time went on, yeah, I just found that connecting with every single person I worked with, making sure when I photograph a wedding, after the wedding itself, I will share the gallery to, with a couple's permission, of course, to those vendors, so that way they can share content as well. And as a result, I get extra eyes on my brand from a client point of view, and I can basically still have a very sustainable business and income that where I don't really have to spend a lot on advertising itself.
I love hearing that you're doing that because honestly, I didn't advertise much. I did bridal shows, and half or more of the reason I did bridal shows was to connect with vendors, to invite them to come sit at my booth if they want to have lunch. As I said before, send people to booths, walk around, meet new people, solidify relationships. Sure, I would get 4 or 5 good weddings out of it usually, but it was that connecting with others, including, I don't know about you, but I used to get a lot of work from other photographers because we can't do all of them. Some people try, but we can.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually probably a really large part of the incoming leads is from photographers that probably market better than I do and probably have a better reach on social media, but they're getting the leads, but they're often booked out first. So sometimes they would, refer me the lead, and I classify that as a warm lead. So having that recommendation from another leading photographer is great, and it usually converts really well because often that photographer has a very similar style or a look or approach,
Mhm.
and I can deliver a similar product that they might have fell in love with originally.
I was thinking about how if you're driving behind a big truck, you can get in the, I don't know what it's called, like the,
Slipstream?
yeah, you can get
Yeah.
in the slip stream, and it helps pull you along. So
Mm.
yeah, yeah. And I'm sure you refer them back. As,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I do have a close sort of circle of referral partners, and that includes videographers as well. I
Mhm,
did dabble in videography for a little while. In 2019, there was kind of a massive growth period when it came to wedding video. And I sort of answered that call by having contractors work under my brand and provide video. And that actually resulted in quite a large chunk of income, especially around 2021 and 2022. And then I found the suppliers that are doing wedding video are doing such a good job now. They were doing a better and more consistent job than I
mhm.
could provide. So I decided to go back to just purely focusing on photography and then having referral partners with regular videographers that I work with because that's a very important relationship on a wedding day.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And in Australia, recent figures have shown that about 70 odd percent of couples are now hiring videographers for their weddings. So that's a big portion now. So yeah, having that connectivity and relationship with videographers has been really important lately.
Yeah. I do think I hadn't thought about it in a while, but I do think that there was a lull in the industry in video. And I think with the digital world and the potentials there with the new technology and with places to share, let's share it on Facebook, let's send it to our family. It created more desire. So, yeah. And working together with people that we love to work with makes the day so much easier, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And a lot of my other referrals do come from couples themselves. So I would provide a good service, even down to, I'll go as far as learning the names of the parents before the actual day itself and all the wedding party names as well. So all the bridesmaids and groomsmen. So that way I have a more personable experience with them on the day. And that often results in being more memorable as well, rather than being that bossy photographer that just shouts at everyone.
Hey, you.
I, yeah, just like to be, yeah, more connected with everyone so I can get more out of them as far as the subject is concerned, but also, just providing that excellent service where, I can be more memorable and they might in turn refer me to someone that they might know, or if they're getting married themselves, or if the parents had a great experience with me, maybe the second child that's getting married in the family might be referred on, or a cousin or something like that. So yeah, that's how I've found, and that's part of that client experience as well, making sure that I'm quite personable with everyone. And, this is, you get let into a certain window of someone's life and it's very personal space as well. So, yeah, being friendly, connective, personable is super important to me.
Same, same, same. Couple things in this conversation. Uh, I use the power of prints
Hmm.
to also network. So one of the things I did when I did engagement sessions is I would make a stack of wallets. I would ask how many guests they have, and I'd make a stack of wallets with my watermark on the front, and then on the back, I had like a stamp. It was a permanent drying ink stamp rather than doing it as a business card, business card. I did it as a real photograph. And I surprised the bride and groom with it and suggested they put it around all the tables. And that I know got people remembering me because, again, like you, I used to get bridesmaids. I had some bridesmaids where they picked me long before they ever had a groom, which was so fun.
That is
Um,
the best type. Yeah.
yes. And with vendors, I make prints that they can put in the space when they meet with clients. I use as folios that stand up, so maybe two 8x10s, or if it's a venue, I and I've got some beautiful photographs of the venue with the bride and groom. I give them a wall portrait if they've got a space to put it behind their desk or somewhere, of course, with my name on it, so that you've got that hard copy impact. And
Let me write that down because that postcard idea is fantastic. So I can't think of many people that I know of that do that sort of thing. And with the popularity of engagement sessions kind of increasing, I think that will be a great method of getting some branding out there for sure.
yeah, definitely. What I do with engagement sessions is I have a separate charge for it if they were just hiring me for that. But if they book me, then they get a free engagement session, but they have to prepay a minimum purchase
Hmm.
because I got tired of having people put one or two 8x10s in in the book, back in the dark ages when there was no digital, or now I'd be sharing it on Facebook, but getting no income from that. And I frequently um, would get an extra, let's say if the wedding booking was 5,000 for the wedding, I might easily get a $2,000 to $3,000 order from the engagement because I encourage them. I know this is not about me. um, we're wanting to pick your brain, but uh, 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 I would suggest that they're going to want a little book that they bring to like the shower and things like that. And then they're going to want a wall portrait that they put at the entrance to the wedding and then move over to the cake. And if it's a go, I frequently would make some serious extra bonus money from that and not be wasting my time with the people that don't really care that much. So little tip, but we want more tips from you too.
I do a similar process where I have a separate charge on the price list for engagement sessions, and I do sort of advertise it and have its kind of own page on the website as well. So if people are just interested in doing that by itself, they can do so. But if they end up booking the wedding, that price is subsidized as well. So I take a quite a substantial discount off that. And if they book it after the fact as well, after they've booked a wedding, sometimes they reach out because they start looking at the website more, social media more, sort of dreaming about their wedding. They kind of think, hang on, maybe I want an engagement session as well, and they sort of add that on. So I add a nominal charge to the invoice, and that often results in print sales because I use PickTime where I deliver the files electronically so they can use it as an announcement on social media, which is obviously the biggest way of doing that these days. But often people want to have either some kind of printed invite done, or they put like a big print on their gift table, and they would have like a extra wide mat where they would have people write their signatures and well wishes on, or even like a big canvas sometimes that has like a big blank area like the sky, for example, and then people can write on that
Mhm.
as well. So yeah, that's been good. I haven't had much in the way of sort of album sales, but generally loose prints, yeah, always quite a common thing.
Right. Well, I'm a big in-person sales gal. That's my superpower. It's what I teach when I'm coaching, like the strongest part of that curriculum. And so sitting with them and doing a slideshow put to music of their engagement session, and they're seeing, you know, 40 or 50 great images, 90% do a book. And also I love the what you said, the sign in. I also love to encourage them to do at least one beautiful scenic portrait. And I say it's so exciting because this is going to be your first piece of art in your home. And also, wedding photographs, as time passes, they're not as powerful as a beautiful portrait of you two looking like yourselves. And so, all of that goes into people deciding that they're going to want wall portraits from the engagement too, along with that sign in and all the cool things you can do. So, yeah, it's like free money just laying around
Mhm.
and that people
I
are.
always try. I always try to create a touch point with couples, even through the shoot process, by sort of planting the seed about prints. I always say to them, if I take a particular sort of artful sort of photograph that's not necessarily a close up of their faces, but it might be something that takes in the landscape of the venue that they might be getting married at, and they might be small in the frame. I call that or dub that a wall worthy
Mm,
picture or a wall-worthy portrait.
hmm
And then I sort of talk it up to them, show them on the back of the camera, and go, "Oh, this will look fantastic on your wall." That's one of I always try to come away with at least one wall-worthy banger, because that's
hmm
the language with a lot of younger couples, and they go, "Oh, I love that," I got to have that. So that often results in a bigger sort of print sale as well. But I do aim to have more touch points through the process, including blogging more and linking articles through the workflow process leading up to the wedding itself, because you need to be planting that seed pretty much throughout the booking process right from the start.
I find it interesting that we're, I don't know how many miles away, a million miles from each other. And a lot of the concept of running our businesses in a way that can be profitable, that planting those seeds, doing all the things to grow and to create products for people. I'm not saying the words the way I want to, but the similarities between you and I being so many thousands of miles apart makes me
Yeah.
really happy. This
Um,
show's been listened to in 99 countries.
oh,
And,
awesome.
and I've discovered from conversations with some of my guests who are in countries you wouldn't think maybe would have the same, like Singapore, where there's so much commonality in what we're doing. I know you were thinking it might be fun to share what the wedding world is like in Australia. I don't know if you have anything to compare with other countries, but um, what do you have to say about the world of weddings down under?
Yeah, so they're often much the same in terms of format. I have noticed because I have photographed weddings in Thailand and France before, and I have a lot of friends in America, and they're often structured quite differently. So often the sort of amount of hours of coverage might be quite different. But I found in Australia, yeah, and it's also changing and shifting slightly. A lot more sort of elopements and
Mhm.
also sort of registry weddings have come about, and you can pretty much blame that on COVID causing that. Melbourne has been known for the longest lockdowns in the world. They pretty much spanned over 2 years, so that actually caused a massive disruption in the industry here in Melbourne, and as a result, the trend of having smaller weddings started when you only could have 5 people gathered in one spot together, and that kind of evolved into people wanting to have less guests at their weddings. The cost of living is growing quite a bit in this state as well, and as a result, people are peeling back the amount of guests that they might have, the more elaborate sort of weddings. So the amount of hours of coverage is often shrinking with that as well.
So, in terms of overall profit, is I found that some of my biggest sales of prints and wall portraits and so forth were from the smaller weddings. And my theory was that they had more money that they didn't just shell out for the wedding. Are you finding, in terms of the bottom line, it's more or less? What's your experience with that?
I find with the smaller weddings, the from a profitability sense, you actually are spending less time throughout the whole process. So
Mhm.
the courtship with the client, also post-production work as well. You're saving a bit of time here and there. So when you break it down per hour, how much you're making per hour, it's actually quite profitable and economical for me to service them. And I also can do them, and they're usually year round as well. They're not so weather dependent because Melbourne has a very seasonal wedding industry. As with the elopements or the registry weddings, they often can be just at the what we call the treasury, which is like a courthouse style wedding. So it's not so weather dependent. So I do have multiple ones booked through the next month where, yeah, they're not too fussed about having the sunny sunsets at the wineries. It's they just want to get that certificate signed, go for a small photo shoot, and that's it. And there's less touch points through the process from booking to the actual job itself. And of course, it yields less photographs in the end, so it's actually less to edit. So when you break it down per hour, it actually works out really well.
Mm. When I did some of the smaller ones, I would still do a full wedding attire session with the bride and groom that could last an hour, hour and a half. So I had a lot of very sellable images and didn't, I love that idea of not having to do the whole everything. I was in Idaho so that, or sorry, I was in Idaho for my great niece's wedding. And, it was the full deal, which was great, but I was so glad I wasn't photographing it. And it was the hottest day of the year, and the videographer's camera overheated and stopped working. And, so I love those smaller weddings that are ultimately potentially more profitable. So yeah, so sounds like a good thing has happened in the middle of what wasn't a good thing, which was the COVIDs.
Yeah,
That,
I enjoy doing them because they're often quite small. Sometimes there is little as three or four guests, sometimes maybe 20, 25 people. And you pretty much connect with each and every one of them. So you say hello to them as they arrive,
hmm
and it's uh, even the interactions with a couple is just so more present, as well as with the bigger weddings of say 75 people and up. Uh, I find the couples barely spend any time with each of their guests, and the guests become somewhat detached as well. So you
hmm
often see people, so even during the ceremony, scrolling through Facebook or Instagram on their phones, watching the football scores or something. So
Oh, that's
those little ones, yeah, are great in that sense. And with the courthouse weddings, they're very cheap. They're only a few $100s, really, and you can, get an outfit, an off the rack suit, off the rack dress, and go out to dinner for your reception celebration afterwards. So the actual wedding process itself costs less than a couple $1,000s, and that's sort of freed up their budgets to maybe splash out on the photographer because I'm not the cheapest one out there, and I, sort of, show that I do this as a bit of a specialty now, and I enjoy doing them and really push them on the social media and on my website. So, yeah, happy to keep going with them, and they happen during the week too, which is also
yeah,
a great thing.
yeah. I think it's a great way to also avoid the burnout because I loved weddings until I hit that wall. And the last wedding that I booked in the like I've done some weddings since then. I've been in business since 82. Um, but in terms of like this is this is it. I'm not advertising anymore. I'm switching to the portraits. Every vendor except one was a nightmare vendor. And the bride's mother, the groom was the worst, the father, it was one of those where it's like universe saying, that's it. You can't do this anymore. My then boyfriend, I I got in the car and said, well, that wasn't too bad. And he said, are you kidding? Those people treated you terribly. And it's like the light went on, and I cried all the way home and was like, I've created an abusive situation, because I take ownership of it. So I love the thought of those simpler ones, weekdays, not the pressure, more time for dollars, more time to also then grow. Do you also do family portraits, kids, some other specialty branding? Is that in your wheelhouse, or are you primarily doing the weddings and the couples?
Yeah, so I the largest part of my income is weddings, but I do also commercial photography, and
Hmm
that came about probably 7 or 8 years ago. Actually, it might be more like 9 or 10 now, where I discovered there was a big need for businesses that needed content for their online businesses, or they wanted to get their websites, sort of looking more, grander and with better photography on it. And I sort of jumped on that need and kept going with it. And it was slowly growing alongside my wedding business, but of course, the COVID lockdowns really killed that. So there was a period where I barely did any sort of commercial work other than a little bit of product work, which people could mail me and I could shoot it in the house and
hmm
light it and so on. But um, the those sorts of small businesses found it really tough coming out the other side, where they've had so many losses and the budgets just weren't there. But it's only up until sort of this year where it's really starting to come back in full
Good.
force.
Uh-huh.
And I will get to a point where that type of business might even overtake the weddings, especially as I get older. And the physicality is getting harder and harder when it comes to doing, sometimes in peak season, you're doing two, three, sometimes even four weddings a week. And when you mentioned burnout before, that is an absolute real thing, and I've been going on long enough to sort of having experienced it at least a couple of times. And you do need to find something new to sort of focus on to remove that sort of heavy weight of all the edits that you have to get through. It's kind of saved me this year with the sort of advantage of AI-based editing programs that can assist you in working through your culling process, your editing process. Doesn't replace what I can do, but it sort of assists and makes the process a lot faster, which in turn makes your business more economical. So that means it's more profitable. And
Right,
when you enjoy profit, it just makes the business more enjoyable to work in.
right, right. Um, Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, the body takes longer to recover as we mature. Used to be,
Absolutely.
I had a Saturday wedding. Sunday, I was pretty sore, and that adrenaline hangover, I
Mm,
could kind of feel it in my kind of around the bones, probably in the fascia. And then I started noticing Monday I felt pretty bad too when I did big weddings. And so I like hearing that you're kind of seeing a future of a possible not complete reinvention, but just this is a crystal and we're turning it and having different
yeah.
rainbows happen. If you're watching me, you're like, what's she doing with her hands? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I did four weddings in a row
Oh,
recently at the peak of our summer. So I'm not sure of the Fahrenheit numbers, but it was probably north of 100 degrees for you, which is sort of mid 30s in Celsius. And doing that 4 days in a row was quite the killer. And I kind of summed it up in the way that when you work in a factory or you're a construction worker, it's quite a physical job. But you look at, say, an office worker, it's such as an accountant, it might be a brain focused sort of job. But being a wedding photographer on site, you kind of have both. So you've got the physicality, but also you have to be switched on for so many hours at a time, and you're often underwatered and underfed during that sort of 7 to 10 hours that you might be working. And yeah, it takes quite a toll on the body if you're not looking after yourself. And doing several days in a row, that really compounded to, a lot of fatigue after that weekend. And as a result, you don't feel like getting back into the editing and the marketing that you have to do, all the mechanics of the back end of the business that you have to deal with outside of the weddings.
so my mind is going two directions here. Um, so the first one, so I hear you. And okay, I'll go with the second one and see if I come back to what I was going to ask you. The first one, if I talk too much, I'll forget them both. um, why don't you have help editing if you're doing those many weddings? Why don't you have an assistant taking care of all of that? And yeah, what?
Yeah, so originally, when I probably come across my first sort of time where I was sort of facing that burnout was probably the post-COVID rush. And that was before AI tools were a bit of a thing.
Mhm.
And yeah, you would definitely get overwhelmed. And I started bringing on extra people by sending the Lightroom catalog to them so they can go through either the culling process or, if I've already done that, the editing process, because it's not just a matter of putting a preset on and calling it a
Oh,
day. I do take the time to make sure that the subjects stand out. The skin needs to be smooth on those hero close-up portraits.
mhm.
Remove temporary blemishes on the people's faces, and cropping and straightening horizons and so on. And I often found that when I did outsource to a human, they'd do they'd do the job and I get it back, and I found myself kind of reviewing it anyway and kind of tweaking it. So I've kind of felt like I was doing the same amount of work I would have done originally if I had just done it myself. And because obviously being your work, you're quite precious about it. So you do
Mhm.
focus a lot of energy towards it. And then the AI tool started coming out over the last sort of year. And even though I'm still shooting sometimes north of 50 weddings a year, the process of the culling has been dramatically shortened. And I still review what the program does anyway, but it really takes the heavy lifting out of it.
Mm.
And the procrastination factor when it comes to culling is just huge for me. So I found myself, yeah, that was a really advantageous addition to the business, even though they're not exactly cheap, but as time goes on, it gets better and better.
Mhm.
And the latest iteration of the program that I use does a full editing, including masking as well. So that way, that will take, yeah, a large part of the repetitive work out of it, and I can just do those little fine extra bits, which is that extra polish that I like to deliver, and that sort of has taken, yeah, a lot of those laborious processes out of it. So it's a it's less daunting after the wedding
Okay.
itself.
So what's the program that you like to
I
use?
use Aftershoot.
Yeah.
It's quite an early adopter. I have used the other ones that are on the market as well, Imagine AI. I found after they announced their pricing structure, it wasn't very economical with the amount of weddings that I was doing. So I went to Aftershoot, which is a flat rate, and that has been great. They have a great community and they really listen to their users as well. And I've been lucky enough to have a hand in some of the code development as well by regularly keeping in touch with one of the developers and having interviews about how I use the product and what I try to get out of it.
Right. Yeah. I have a T-shirt of theirs from a convention, I believe.
Yeah.
Uh, one of my and one of my guests on the show, um, that of course my brain is not going to come up with her name right this minute. My apologies, but she was big on promoting it at the PPA conventions and definitely did the things to get my attention. And I'm glad to hear that it is working so well. So, I wanted to ask if there's something that you know or that you can share that is classic Marcel about wedding photography or hot tip or something like if you're giving a program, and I'm struggling to ask this right, but what's some wisdom that really is from you that people might not hear anyplace else unless they are listening to this podcast or hear you in some other way? Like, what's your zone of genius or hot
Um,
tips?
so I, I I used to be a sales rep and in the completely unrelated industry. And what I learned from that, sales is more than just trying to sell something. It's encompasses so many different things, and one of them was being quite personable with your clients, really listening to them. As soon as I switched my sort of sales process when I'm engaging with a new client, um, I really ask them the open questions. So that way they'd be leading the conversation quite a bit with their wants and desires and their passions. And I found that those people that are willing to tell their story and I listen and I deliver a product that really meets their expectations or often exceeds their expectations, that they have a really good client experience as a result. When I mentioned before about learning the wedding party names and the parents' names and all that kind of thing, that's part of that process of, yeah, just being able to be on that level with those people rather than just turn up as a button pusher, as a lot of people do, or people treat it as quite a wedding factory where they might just be that's just another paycheck for them. Um, you're shooting someone's party, so you need to be, yeah, really switched on in terms of being that person that holds the day together You're
Mhm.
often running the timesheet as well, so you need to be organized as well. I worked for a couple of companies where they were in my previous career, they were very procedure based and driven on, steps. And I've sort of implemented that through the courting process with the clients, but also in the lead up to the wedding itself and even post wedding. So that way, everything's mapped out nicely for everyone. They are not left in the dark with any questions as well. I often try to sort of find out if there's anything that they need help with or they don't understand. And I educate them as much as possible through the process of what to expect, because this is probably their first time getting married and hopefully their only time. So they need that sort of person that can, has seen it all and, sort of lay out what will work best for them and their day. I have articles on my website that I link them that has all those information, like how many hours do I need for a wedding photographer. I'm building an article at the moment on what to wear for an engagement session. There's another one about suit etiquette as well. All those little tips and stuff to hopefully help those couples through the process where they feel comfortable working with someone that's, yes, seen many different aspects of weddings and, throughout the years.
So let me see if I can summarize that because that was a lot. So
Yeah, sorry, I do ramble.
decor, um, you learned from being a salesperson elsewhere the value of building relationships.
Yeah,
Have you,
absolutely. Yeah.
have you seen the movie on Netflix? You're not selling fentanyl, but have you seen Pain Hustlers?
I know
Uh,
of the trailer. Yeah, I have was seeing that
yeah.
much at least.
So core. So when people are reps for drug companies, and rules have changed, but they build relationships with doctors. And
Hmm.
this, the sad thing is that um, some fentanyl products, like we're not going down that rabbit hole, but it's really clear when you see that the importance of building relationships. Uh, another Okay. Anyway, so build relationships where I love what you say, open questions, like listen, spend time with them, get to know them, help them feel cared about, and that you're going to fulfill what it is they want. And maybe I'm guessing they don't even know they want it until you're helping listen to them, and then be of service to them using your expertise and your experience to help plan the day, to give them as much information as possible, to structure the day with them. Circling back, it's called a callback in improv, uh, a callback to working with other vendors so that the day goes
Hmm.
really smoothly. I think I've never thought about this quite like this until I'm today years old when I thought about it this way, that building relationships with vendors is a huge service to our brides and grooms. Because when we show up at a wedding day and we all like each other and we know how to work together well, and we've got DJs and cake bakers and all of that in our little back pocket that we know will be wonderful for the bride and groom, it's a generosity. Whereas if we just show up, bang, 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 with our cameras, and whoever is the cake is late, which happens a lot, the flowers, I always would tell people to tell your makeup artist and your florist, put an extra hour on when you need things, because in my experience, they tend to notoriously, like flowers notoriously late, and makeup artists taking a lot longer than they guess. That's a huge service to our clients. So does that seem like a good summary? Be of service and connect with them in a
Yeah, and
meaningful
also
way.
yeah, and also systemize your practices as much as possible. I introduced a CRM, so that way I can send out timed emails, gather all the information that I need, and also lay out and establish some expectations with the client and also other suppliers that they might be connecting with, such as those makeup artists, because they're not going to go to the stage of, okay, we need to make sure, we need to be ready for the photographer. They're going to just do their service. They're going to end it at this time or aim to finish it at a certain time, and then their job is done for the day.
Mhm,
As with us, I have to make sure every little other aspect of the day lines up. So, such as the groom getting ready, or if it's a same-sex partner, they might be getting ready together. But if it's a separate groom coverage and then the bride coverage, I need to make sure that the makeup artist has done what they need to do. So that way, I can time the dress going on at a certain time, so that way the bride is ready at a certain time itself, and then they're ready to go to the chapel or the ceremony space on time as well. Because all those little things, if that's not mapped out correctly before that wedding day itself, what that does is compounds the rest of the day, and it just makes it more hectic for everyone involved, and no one likes photos of the stress.
no.
That if you're running behind and you're running out of light, because in winter our days are very short, and yeah, we need to make sure that everything runs on time and every supplier is aligned with what you have planned.
Mhm. You and I approach this very similarly. I would do is pre-CRM, but I have a form that we would fill out together at the last meeting of, you know, who shows up where and when. And I had a little suggestion that I would tell my brides, you've hired me for, let's say, 8 hours. If people are late, then that means I have to work longer because I can't do an 8 hour job in 7 hours. And I don't think you
Hmm.
want to miss the key things. So if we don't get it before, we're going to have to do some things after that then delay the start of the reception. And, I'm whatever per hour. So tell your friends and family if you're late, you have to pay the overtime, which I
Hmm.
never collected. But, just to make it clear that I'm not the one that you want to have to rush through what I'm doing because these are what you have left.
Yeah,
Uh,
because the time that you have to make back is often during the portrait session. So your
mhm,
ceremony takes X amount of time. So that is conducted, to a script in most cases. So you've got that certain amount of time, and then you've got your family photos. And then at the reception, generally in Melbourne, there's a lot of venue-based weddings. So you pretty much have to adhere to the schedule applied by the venue, which is generally centers around the kitchen. So that way everything's ready to go out on time. And that gap is usually closed by cutting into your shoot session, which is the
right.
couple session or with your wedding party. And no one likes to rush those things. That's why they hired me in the first place, is they fell in love with those photos that they see on the website. And if you've got no light or you're rushing through it or stressed about it all, you're not going to get the same level of service or quality that you might have. Like, I'll do my best, of course, but yeah, it's sometimes you find yourself your hour that you had put aside only turns into 10 to 15 minutes sometimes.
Right. And then you've got those church ladies or other coordinators, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. And you're trying to like do great art. One of my early, we'll call it a lesson, not a disaster, but it was unfortunate. We we did meet before to do the formals. Wait, how did we structure that? I can't remember, but of course, I wasn't as structured and organized as I became and learned from other people and from my own experience. And these were friends of mine. So we were doing the portraits on the altar, and just when I was going to do the bride and groom, they pressured me to stop and said they'll come back in to the church and do the I can do the formal portraits of the bride and groom then. Well, I'm sure you can guess what happened. The flowers weren't there. There was another meeting in the church. We never got that altar shot of just the bride and groom. And because they're people I knew for many, many years, I can't tell you how many times and they love their pictures. And I did get great pictures of them together outdoors. And the altar shots were great of every, wedding party, family, all of that. They asked me so many times. Now, remind me, did you ever get a picture of the two of us on the altar? And I was always, now remember, they, you know, everybody pressured me to stop, and we decided we'd go back in because it was a what we call the cake, punch, and nuts reception afterwards, and then the more meal and everything was later with a smaller group. And it's been many, many, many decades. Nowadays, if I could find those negatives, I could make them that altar shot, because there certainly were plenty of pictures of the bride and groom with people that AI would easily remove. But yeah, so we learned from those things, like and and of course I learned the first thing I do is the bride and groom, the bride, and then the bride and groom if it's an altar thing, and then we add and subtract, but always get the key stuff. So yeah, we live and learn. Ooh.
Absolutely.
Well, the clock on the wall says that's all. It's almost
Yep.
time to say bye. Um, so I know that at some point in the future, you're going to have some good stuff to share with people and mentor and teach and have classes and so forth. So how do people connect with you if they have questions, or if they want to get on an email list so that when you've got those available, they can be notified? What's a good way to get in touch with you, Marcel?
Sure. Probably the easiest and most fluid way of just asking a very simple question is connecting on Instagram, which my handle is Marcel the photographer, because I've got
Mm,
a very long, complicated last name. That
mm,
URL didn't wasn't really practical, and plus, I decided on that user handle before I knew Instagram was going to be a vehicle for my business. So that is probably the easiest way. But also, you can connect via email, which is I do have a form on my website. And hopefully, by the time that this gets out to people, I'll have a section on my website for tools for photographers, which will have some articles on some of the tools that I use to make my business more efficient and more profitable, but also being able to connect in the mentoring space as well.
great, great. And your website is Marcel,
MarcelVanderhorstphotographer.com.
right? Good, good. Okay, so last question. Either is there something, and this has been so great, and even though I don't do weddings anymore, I still love weddings. I love wedding dresses. I love all the things. So thanks for having a conversation with a topic that's near and dear to my heart. Uh, so, parting thoughts. Either is there something you would be like, oh man, I wish I'd have mentioned this, or is there something you want to leave us with?
Yeah, maybe I could speak to a young photographer that might be starting out, if that's okay. I'd probably say a big part of getting to know this business is to don't try to sell yourself on price. Clients often are not looking to, you're not answering a problem if you're just going to put your price forward. You need to showcase what you're worth, which is being able to demonstrate that you can work a camera quite well, and then the client experience is really good. So how to do that is grab some friends, a couple, and go to a nice location at a nice time of day and photograph them and learn how to photograph first before you start charging money for it, because a wedding is a once in a lifetime event for a lot of people, and if you're trying to learn photography on the go under with the pressures of a wedding is really difficult to do, and it can end in disaster. I was lucky to grow up playing around with my dad's film camera, sort of learnt the nuances of shutter speed and aperture and film speeds and all that kind of thing. And then when I got into digital, started photographing landscapes and still lives and all that kind of thing before I even picked up my camera for a wedding or earning any money with it. So, understanding the fundamentals of the core basics of photography, I think, is a big part of it all. And yeah, once you sort of establish yourself as a photographer, you can start growing that folio and put some money into branding, building a nice website, and yeah, get out there and network, and that's how you're going to get that business. But by throwing just a price out there and seeing if it sticks is, yeah, it's going to lead to burnout, because even if you do charge a little amount, you might get some bookings and you're going to get to a point where you might not be able to take on that much work. And if you're working alongside a full-time income or a full-time job, yeah, it's going to stack up. And yeah, that's probably my advice to a young photographer.
That's really good advice that people that are new need to hear. So thank you so much. And thank you, Marcel, for saying yes to being on the
Yeah,
show.
thanks for having me.
But this has been a fun conversation for me. And I know that those people that listen all the time or somebody that finds us for the first time is getting a lot out of it. So,
I'm very approachable, so yeah, feel free to reach out, anyone.
all right. And bye, everybody, for now.